Okay, so we're back on another episode. This is episode 3 of the podcast, and been an interesting few days, but today especially has been an interesting day, another all-time high on the Bitcoin price chart in dollar comparison. But ultimately, yeah, it's just I think we're going to talk around the price and just what to expect in the market, and like we've been through this a couple of times now, Chris, with the bull market, the bull run kicks in, and it does affect your kind of mindset in many ways. And sometimes people get carried away. People get sucked in by just the dramatic price changes and movements. And some people start trying to time the market potentially and buying and selling and all that stuff. And it's things that like I've done before in the past in the crypto space, generally. But when you actually come to realize what Bitcoin is, and it keeps saying this over and over again, and this is one of the key things as well with regards to what we're trying to do with Emerge 21 around the education on Bitcoin. It's really important to really grasp what you're talking about, what you're handling here with Bitcoin itself. So price action does get people excited. It gets a lot of media attention, and it's we're starting to see this more and more, especially on mainstream as well. There's a lot more talk around Bitcoin as the price goes higher. But yeah, what are your thoughts currently, Chris, around the market? What's happening, and kind of what's your viewpoint, and what are you expecting, I suppose, coming in the coming months?
Yeah, yeah, I think your points are all right. I think it's people get carried away. Like the price brings people in no matter what. It's kind of the main draw, I think, of Bitcoin, and that's kind of some of the incentives that are built into it as well. But I think one of the key points you made was like people need to understand what they own because they'll end up making mistakes with it. I think there's a saying a few people use as well. Like name me like you look at all the wealthiest people in the world, like show me a wealthy trader. Like trying to buy and sell a market like this is not wise. Like there's different strategies on it. I'm not going to profess to understand the best strategy. Like I can say what I do. In regards to Bitcoin, which is very little to be honest, and sometimes that's the best strategy. Just buy and
Yeah.
hold is the best strategy that I've seen before used. Now, in terms of understanding what you own, I think it's all down to doing your own research on Bitcoin. I always remember like the euphoria around 2021, and stocks became, heavily traded during that time. I think applications like Robinhood kind of helped onboard people, but didn't help in the long term. So Robinhood had a really nice interface, easy to download. Click of a button, you could buy a stock, but nobody was looking at what the stock was, what the underlying value is, what their assets were, what their debt was. Like there's a lot to stock investing, as well as there a lot being the Bitcoin. And if you don't understand what you're buying and you're just looking at the ticker and it looks nice and it sounds nice and the price action is nice, that you can get away with that for a short period of time, but you won't over a long period of time. And Robinhood onboarded quite a lot of people into stocks and shares. But the market got too heated. Tesla went in a run. Loads of stocks went in a run at that time, and some very good companies, but they got overheated, overpriced, and a lot of people lost a lot of money, and they actually never returned to the stock market again. Deleted the app and said they were finished with stocks, and PTSD from the whole thing. And that can happen in Bitcoin too. Now again, if you understand what you own, you'll understand that it's much greater than stocks and shares in terms of worldwide impact and future potential. But again, you can buy it based on the price, and you can write it up, and you can try and time the tops and try it time the bottoms. Many people have tried this before and failed. So yeah, and then at this stage of the cycle, because as you say, we've had a number of all-time highs over the last few days, probably weeks, and we're in that period at the minute where price discovery for is the phrase that's used, where it's going to find a new top eventually. It's probably going to correct again. I, I know cycles exist actually, and this is an interesting conversation. Cycles exist. I don't think they'll exist forever. I don't know how long they'll go on for. Maybe another 3 or 4 cycles, and then level out to be Bitcoin is money. It's a reserve asset. It's the base layer unit of account. Whatever. And again, 3 or 4, it could go on another 20 cycles. It could be this cycle, but the narratives of super cycle, which means it's going to go up for 8 years straight. Very little drawbacks. Again, possible, but I think that only happens when there's a level of understanding of Bitcoin out there. amongst mainstream that is yeah, it's well established, and I don't think we're anywhere near that. So my expectation is that we will get a run up again. There will be some kind of drawdown. I don't know where the run up will go to. I don't know where the drawdown, how far the drawdown will be, but it's just a natural kind of human behavior thing at the moment. And I don't think we're at that stage where Bitcoin is understood well enough to get away from that.
Yeah. And it is obvious, as you say, there Bitcoin isn't understood enough. And that, again, it hits $93,000 today. And again, anybody kind of in my sphere, my family and friends, have no idea what's going on if they haven't, taken the time to kind of look into Bitcoin or to understand it. And it's a strange situation. Again, we had this conversation beforehand briefly about like when you're in the space and you're on Twitter and you're in that sort of space where everybody kind of is involved within or has been involved in Bitcoin for quite a while. It seems like, well, this is crazy. Why is nobody else, aware of what's going on? But it's because literally it was the same for ourselves at one point in time. Like we didn't know until we knew kind of thing, until we actually discovered it and understood it. And again, it is educating yourself around that. And for again, at this moment in time with what's happened recently and what's happening within like even, countries, governments trying to consider putting Bitcoin on their reserves of their country's treasury reserves. Like the US potentially that's going to happen at some point in the not, too distant future. Those kind of things will start a whole cascade of like game theory among, nation states as well. And then when you say this to somebody who isn't involved or doesn't have a grasp of what Bitcoin is at a base layer level or an understanding from first principles, and all these terms that we're using, for anybody listening in that's not got any kind of awareness of what Bitcoin is, they've maybe heard about it or they've heard their friends trying something and they've got scammed or this, that, and the other. It's really understanding what Bitcoin is from a first principles level and getting that awareness. Once you do that, and once you have that awareness, and it doesn't take an awful lot to do it, you just need to be pointed in the right direction. Then you start thinking more for yourself and you start, realizing that some of the things that you're hearing from other people isn't actually correct. And they may well obviously be well-meaning people, like people within your family environment, your sphere, your network, but ultimately they're basing all their ideas and kind of thoughts around what's happening, what they've grown up with within the fiat financial system, which when you come to realize what that is and how it functions and how Bitcoin functions, you start seeing things very differently. And it is hard, it's difficult to get to that place. And then only then, when you see what's happening in the markets, you can actually sit back. And yes, you get excited about it. Like today, like I was getting notifications every $1,000. It kept going up. It was like notifying me. It's at an all-time high, an all-time high. And you can't help but get excited about it. But you have to take a step back always and get a bigger kind of perspective on what's happening. And look again as a Bitcoiner, when you come to really understand Bitcoin, you do lower your time preference and that you look further into the future. So you're not kind of looking at the charts going, oh, it's going up, it's going down. I should buy it up here and try to sell it and try to do this, that, and the other. That's trading. Technically, that's gambling. Whereas with Bitcoin, you're purchasing something that's going to hold your purchasing power. It's going to, grow your purchasing power over time. And the beauty of that too, from the experience I've gone through in 2017 into 2020, when you start messing about with trying to buy and sell, buy high, or sorry, buy low and sell high and all this stuff, it's so stressful. It consumes so much of your time. And this conversation, I could take this into a whole mental health kind of conversation as well. It really, consumes many, many people. And you probably know of stories yourself, Chris, and people that have been, they've lost a lot of money or they've been, brought into some kind of scam type thing. And they were told it was Bitcoin, but they don't understand it. So they're firing money over to people. And I know people personally that fired like multiple thousands, like 10, 20, 30,000 into these kind of scams, which is what they are. And they don't understand what it is, but you need to have the understanding of what Bitcoin is. Once you have that,
Yeah.
you can think for yourself and you can avoid all these other avenues that are leading pretty much leading you down the wrong path.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to get there, but once you're there, it's way more relaxing and well, yeah, you just feel a lot better about yourself
You
generally.
can sleep well at night knowing
Yeah,
that
yeah, you can
what you
sleep well.
hold, like that is the key thing. What's your thoughts on showing people practically what Bitcoin is and maybe dabbling in it a bit. So You give somebody $100 in it and say, monitor that for, the next year or a couple of years, and, that'll be your experience versus, trying to like saying, look, don't buy it until you really understand it. There's probably a balance there somewhere, like, because exposure to it is a good thing for people to learn.
Yeah.
It gives you some emotional attachment to it, but then again, saying wait, don't buy anything until you understand it. Your whole education piece, like that's probably the best way, but is it the most effective way? So just
It's probably, again, I suppose, when you're playing about, like, say, like, you put in like 50, $100, like, as long as you can afford to lose that amount of money, yes, feel free to do that, because then you don't have to stress about it, you don't have to worry about it. But it is a good way. Like, it's like anything, you learn far quicker by doing the thing. By accepting, like in business, accepting Bitcoin payments. It's better to go and download the app or the wallet, use the actual software, use it yourself to see how it functions, how it works. You'll learn from doing more so. But I think it's more from a mindset point of view. I think you gain through the education and knowledge about Bitcoin, you develop a stronger mindset around it, around the whole concept of, finance. And, you see people sitting trading and doing this, that, and the other, or gambling with certain things. And, yes, you can potentially be lucky and make a bit of money, but what's the stats on trading? Is it something like 90, was it
yeah,
96% of traders lose money?
yeah.
Whereas you buy Bitcoin, you don't have to worry about it, let it sit there, and you'll basically outperform pretty much every trader, every hedge fund manager, every investor over the past, 4 years.
Yeah, but isn't
Literally.
there something to be said for like you can easily be shaken out, as the term is, if you don't understand it. So even if you did invest and you thought, look, I'll put on 10% of my net worth on it because I've seen the track record. I don't really understand it. Looks like it's not going away. That 10% then turns into 30-40% of your portfolio. It
Mm.
runs way up. It's starting to crash, as they say, and it's a drawback, a pullback, whatever you want to say. And there's news coming out in the media saying, Bitcoin's dead. Like that's where I find education is very extremely important. So again, you can have
I,
all the nice UIs, you can have all the nice apps that you want, and you can have like they're important. It's important to design nice applications on top of Bitcoin. But unless you understand what you're holding, I think you're going to be shaken out one way or another. Like you could also, get you know a certain percentage away to a target that you have for wanting to get the net worth so you can retire and think that's maxed out now. Bitcoin's had its run. It's gone up as far as it can go because again you won't understand it, not realizing that once you really dig deep into it. And this always sounds like an exaggeration at the beginning when you hear it,
crazy
but
talk.
it's going on forever. Like that is the reality of things. And there's also another reality that once these cycles end, which I think they will at some stage, there is likely going to be an S-curve adoption where, as you say, individuals, countries, several sovereign wealth funds, companies, corporations, small business, everybody jumps in, kind of at the same time. Like, and
Mm.
that would be, I think, the natural conclusion that's going to happen. Like, I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin, obviously. Timing, I just don't know. But what I foresee is cycles will end at some stage and end to the upside and probably very violently, which would be a very exciting, maybe messy time. But I've seen a few debates over this as well. Like, do you want it to happen now? I don't think the world's ready for it. It might
Mm.
be chaotic. How do you make it happen slowly, gradually, then suddenly?
Well,
To
yeah.
steal a phrase, but yeah,
It's happening quicker now than I thought, as far as the price action as such, because of, well, effectively it is because of the Trump election. I think it's sort of what his kind of pledges were before the run up to the election, with adopting it as a treasury reserve or treasury stockpile. But it's like, for me, it would be, the gradual thing would be a more smoother transition, as with anything generally. But as you say, there's a lot of people, like, I've said, like, it will potentially happen quite violently and dramatically, like hitting the higher point where pushing towards potentially a million way sooner than most people expect it to. But you don't know. That's the thing. You don't know. But it's just about, as you said, it's about getting that understanding. I think the quicker, the sooner people, individuals, get a general understanding of what we have here with Bitcoin. Um, it's getting through to people. I think it's a tough It's a tough one. Like we've decided to start a very difficult business in a way and trying to break down kind of stigmas around what Bitcoin is. Because if you look back to when it first started, the whole thing from the start, it was, drug dealers, criminals using this. People still have that in their mind. It's like some kind of scam or Ponzi scheme. And like that's how you do see it from, as a newbie or somebody coming in who's never been exposed to it before, you're going to have that real kind of concern around it. But again, once you sort of break through that surface layer and identify what it is as a functional piece of, software, technology, protocol, once you put all the puzzle pieces together at that base layer and realize, oh, this is actually something very different. And because we have nothing to compare it to in the past, that's what's difficult for it took me a long time, but that's what's difficult for pretty much everyone to get and
Yeah.
grasp.
One of the
Um,
big, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, one of the big things I think the important things about the education side is like when I started out, Andreas Antonopoulos was a great resource for I know I think he favored Ethereum in certain aspects for a while, and the Bitcoin community threw him out, which wasn't the most gracious exit for him because he created a lot of knowledgeable Bitcoiners, and his
Yeah.
content's still great, to be honest. And yeah, I hope he gets back on the trail and starts being an advocate. I don't know if he's still around or whatever, but anyway, back then he was a great advocate for it. But and obviously Max Kaiser was there and a few others were there. But the time it took you to learn because you were only learning off maybe single
Mm.
person at a time and their thoughts. Now you can go on and again that's what we're trying to do at Emerge 21, like be a resource for people, but you can get up to speed much quicker, and that's actually an acceleration as well in itself. So what might have took somebody 3 or 4 years having an open conversation and questioning things, those answers are already out there somewhere. Like
Yeah.
I've been
And
through
you
hundreds of videos. Yeah,
you can, sorry again for butting in, but you can have the assurance that like, tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of people before you have gone to the depths of, as you said as well, trying to break Bitcoin, trying to, expose any flaws or issues with it. You've got that kind of really backlog, that back history of knowing that so many individuals have come along before you and come to the same conclusion. And like I don't know one person that's, gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole for by themselves for at least 100 hours and come back saying, nah, Bitcoin's not for me. It's
yeah.
there's not one individual that I know has done that.
Properly studied it, yeah, and given
Yeah,
it the time and given it the open mind as well. And it's all right to be critical and skeptical of it. I think that's actually the best way to be
definitely. Yeah,
going into it. But as long as you're not negative against it completely, because if you're going to have the guard up right from the start, it's
yeah,
going to continue that way. And I don't get into debates with people about Bitcoin because again, they can get defensive and it can slow down their understanding of it. Like it's all about being open and like meeting them where they're at, find their level of understanding, and that's kind of what we try to do in our consultancy business and Emerge 21 in general. Alan, question for you. I don't think we've actually discussed this one yet, but what about like price predictions and stuff like that? I don't want to get into it because I think two things that don't uh correlate, well, you can correlate is the time and the price. You can give a price and you can say, I think you said 1 million, you think it's going to arrive at 1 million. You can't say when, or you could say, by 2030, Bitcoin might have this level adoption or whatever, but you can't really tell the price. Um,
mm.
those two variables just don't like it's impossible to do. You can give a price and you can give a time, but you can't give both at the same time. Uh, what's your view on, things like stock to flow model? Basically any prediction charts. What's the latest one, the power law? Like what's your view on those kind of things and price models in general?
I think yeah, it is like models. I suppose models are predictive from historical viewpoints as well, and projecting that out into the future through trends and kind of past performance, past experiences. But like yes, you can project that in the future and come up with prices and things like that at certain moments in time. But Bitcoin is that, and what Michael Saylor says, like Godzilla's come to the table now, and it's like you don't know how it's going to impact the market. Like all kind of what would you say? Like everything's off the table as such as far as like, oh, it could go like this way, I could use the power law, you could do this, that, and the other. Like I suppose Mike, again, in predicting, looking at things, looking at price, I kind of look at people that are way smarter than I am that have, had skin in the game, like the likes of Saylor. Like, yeah, some people are like, well, Michael Saylor is crazy. They've been saying he's crazy a couple of years ago. You come to the day to see what he's done. And I've been listening to Sailor from like 2021, following him what he said. Everything he says makes sense logically. You can break it down so much to like that first principles point of view. And I think I would follow his kind of trail of thought more so. And he may have other agendas down the line regarding, his company and, with regards to like the fiat system, and people have different opinions on that. But yeah, his price predictions generally are, looking at what he's doing. What did he say his base price was? What, 13, was it 13 million
Okay,
within
21
21
years.
years,
Yeah,
something
13
like
million.
that?
Yeah, 3
Uh,
million I think was the lower, and was it 45 was the upper? 49?
Yeah, something like that. 3 million was the worst case, and 40 something was the high case within like 21 years. But again, you're being very specific around that. I just think if game theory kicks in, which it's starting to do at a sovereign wealth fund level, like state, national, country level, once that starts to kick in now in the coming years, and I think we have maybe what's this, 2024, potentially the next 5 to 6 years. That's going to kick off massively. Potentially before that. It depends what happens in the US, I think. But like, you're pricing it in US dollar terms all the time. But as they always say, one Bitcoin's one Bitcoin, and that's all very well. But people still price their world, their unit of measurement is, pounds, euros, dollars. So hey, it could go anywhere. It could go anywhere quickly. It's
Yeah.
just hard
And
to
it
give.
is.
That's the thing. You can't give a definitive answer on that. And all I know is it's going to go up. Yeah, it's going up forever. That's
It's going up
the
to the
key.
right. That's as much as you know, and a chart is going up to the right, and like there's going to be drawbacks and things like that. And I think maybe share a bit about people who are new maybe to it and price drawdowns as well. I think Paul was pulling up a chart earlier on price drawdowns just for the audience to see. Let me know when you can see my
Because
screen.
that's when it starts messing with your mind, really.
Yeah. So this is the 2016 and the 2017 bull run, and this is kind of around the time where we probably got on as well. And you see one, two, three, four, five around, probably averaging 32, 33% drawdown. So over the long period, if you extend this out the whole way, this is negligible, all this. But at the time, it feels rotten. Like it feels
Oh, you
horrible.
sick to your
If you,
stomach.
again, if you don't understand it. But then a couple of a couple of years later, these are opportunities, and that's the way you kind of see it. As like, I know what I'm holding, I know what I'm buying, I know the trajectory of this, I know the impact it's going to have in the world. These are opportunities then. So a lot of people get shaken out in this, and I'm pretty sure there's somebody sold here, and thought that they made a good trade when they seen it come down here, only for a few months later.
Mm.
Yeah, it's probably 6 months, so a few months to be up above that price and then go on parabolic after that, which is not right. Well, obviously it's not nice for the person who experiences that. But again, it probably showed that they didn't know what they were holding, or they were trying to be too right crafty with the price and trading.
I think yeah, it is too. It's not. Don't come into this trying to get rich quick. That's not what this is. It's bigger than that for one thing, but it's zooming out because any drawdowns, like it's horrible when it drops, 30, 50%, which is 80% in the past. It's absolutely horrible to see that happen. And at that moment in time when you feel the worst, when you feel that sort of pit in your stomach and you feel horrible about it, that's the time to buy. That's normally the time when you have no spare cash sitting around as well.
Well, that too, yeah.
But no, it's getting that. It again, it's getting the knowledge base, and it's always zooming out and seeing the bigger picture because, as you say, you see that chart drops 30-something%, but then, 2 months later, potentially it's way, way up again past the previous high. So especially in a bull market as well, you know, you zoom out enough and you put it into like the log chart. Bitcoin's been on a bull market since its inception, effectively, since it's just always going
You
up
get the
way up.
yearly charts or every couple of years charts, it's always up.
Yeah, and if you break it into the 4 yearly chart, like you're always going to be up, and it's getting that grasp of it, and it's just it does take, it takes a lot of kind of, there's so many different parts to it and concepts around it, but that's again what we're genuinely trying to break that all down for people, and just accelerate that understanding around it, because it took me what 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. It took me 5 years really to have actual proper conviction
Yeah.
around it. Like
And
5 years is a
not,
long time. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and if you can get away with your first buy not really knowing and you hold on there for a long time, I think that will help steer the ship in the right direction too, because you'll see how
Yeah.
it acts and that'll kind of desensitize you to price movements over time. So probably the earlier you do get in, obviously the better in ways, but even if it is that small amount, just to play about with it, I suppose to answer an earlier conversation we had, it probably is not a bad thing just to see the volatility over time. Now, again, you won't be as emotionally attached if it's $1,000 versus $100,000, but
Yeah.
like you can see some of the patterns over time. Now, again, you could be sitting on the sidelines watching that and monitoring it, but I suppose it is that combination of put it back real world experience on it, dabbling in it, setting up a lightning network, you're buying it on exchange. I know there's other steps to move the hardware wallet and things like that as you get more advanced. But yeah, that practical element of it plus the education side of it is key. Like again, go back saying but it's great that there's people building loads of great applications on Bitcoin, but to get on board, you need to understand what the base layer is and what Bitcoin's about, why it was created, the history, and its use cases in the world today. So
Mm.
yeah.
But yeah, like it's an interesting time, and it'll be interesting. Yeah, just having even like as you say the history of Bitcoin and like how it was created, why it was created, and we could probably some of the other upcoming podcasts we could talk a bit more around that. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you got to listen to that other podcast I mentioned the other before the weekend.
The Satoshi one
Sushi one, yeah,
on
it was
X?
interesting.
No, I
That,
haven't.
yeah, I've been going into that a bit deeper now. It's an interesting one.
I
But we'll
started
talk.
it, but I haven't finished it. But I love that too as well. Reading about Satoshi Nakamoto's like all the blogs, the cypherpunk history before even Bitcoin. Like, and that's one of the big things I always hammer home with people. Like, Bitcoin wasn't an idea that just came up in 2009. That out of the great financial crisis, somebody thought, I'm going to create a new money here. It's not. Um, it's been an idea and trained since the 70s, maybe even before that, where, electronic payments started becoming an idea. Government money came in place then, so fiat money. Like, how do we get away from this and put money in the hands of the people again? And so that idea had been around. We just didn't have the capability technologically at
Mm,
those stages to do it. And it actually came around at the perfect time. I think probably 2009 where like information was spreading fast enough, like Bitcoin, but not too fast where, like I'm grateful that somebody didn't try and shut it down within the first year because that was the only time to shut it down in terms of
yeah.
size. Now it's at
Mm,
escape velocity. Like no one will shut it down. It's there. It lives on the internet forever. As long as the internet lives, Bitcoin will live. But yeah, that whole history is very interesting. Satoshi Nakamoto, very interesting. This backstory there. Yeah, it's fascinating. So I must actually listen to it then, John Nash. I'm sure some of the viewers might have listened to it as well.
yeah,
Len Sassaman story. Like obviously, yeah, there's a whole list of guys there that have done research on in the cypherpunk community. But yeah, I must listen to that podcast now.
quite mind blowing, I think. Yeah, it is. It's opened my eyes up to a lot of things, like just seeing the connections. But yeah, it's a topic for another day. But it's a
Yeah,
yeah, interesting one.
yeah.
But yeah, so
I know we
no,
don't spend a lot of time about price, but I think this episode was just to kind of speak to the audience, maybe some people who like that our target audience again in Emerge 21 is like we'll speak to Bitcoiners all day, love the community, love going to events and things and meeting up. But really it's the people who are not knowledgeable about Bitcoin. So hopefully there's a couple on here that have picked up a few things. And again, if they want to talk to us, they can. We don't, as I say, don't tend to talk about the price too much. I think I wouldn't lie and say it's the least interesting part of it. It draws people in. It's very important. I don't think it's true the people that do say that. Now you might get into Bitcoin for various different reasons, censorship resistant money, money out of government hands, but I would say 99% of people get in because of the price action. So it's an interesting topic to talk about. Won't make any predictions. But I think there's definitely volatility in it as a new asset class. And I think once you understand what you own, and you do enough research on it, then it's going to serve you very well in the future.
yeah, absolutely. And as again, don't be like there's no stupid questions here either. Like anybody that wants to send
Mhm.
question in, ask them, send an email, whatever it may be, just go ahead. Like literally, there is zero stupid questions. I ask questions all the time around it. I'm still questioning many things. It's a never ending, rabbit
Yeah.
hole you go down with it. You're always learning
Yeah.
every day. So don't
Same
be.
questions come up too, which is important, to know what to tackle, and that's what we've done as well. And kind of tackled some of those questions early. Like, there's some obvious questions after a while, but it's not a stupid question. There's 21 million Bitcoin, there's 8 billion people in the world. That doesn't work. That math doesn't work.
Mm,
But do people realize that you can buy a fraction of Bitcoin? There's 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. Like sometimes that's just new news to somebody the very first time you actually explain it, and they go, "That's like the pennies to the pound, or the cents to the euro, or cents to the dollar. Like it's like the grams in an ounce of gold." Like it's just a divisibility of one unit of Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin's an arbitrary 21 million is an arbitrary number, I would say. Well, maybe again, given Satoshi's background, there's some kind of scientific reason why it's 21 million.
mm.
Nobody's been able to answer that so far, but the 21 million Bitcoin isn't it's a fixed supply, of course, but it's not the only units that Bitcoin can be divided up into.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it took me a couple of years to actually realize there was a hard cap of 21 million. Like I didn't
Really?
I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't even I
I,
wasn't even on my radar. So it is something
yeah.
as it's
I
still
remember
something
reading
just
the white
breaking
paper.
things like that down for people. It's like literally, if you knew that from the start, it's only got 21 million. It's the first fixed finite supply asset that we've ever had in the history of humanity, basically. So that by itself is a bit of a whoa, seriously kind of thing.
Yeah. You
It's
can't create more.
no something very, very
Yeah.
different. So that's a good place to start. And then
I don't think that was in the white paper. I think if you like, I read the white paper a couple of times. I haven't read it in a few years now, but
yes,
I'm pretty sure that the 21 million hard cap wasn't in the Bitcoin white paper at the beginning.
I can't actually remember myself.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. So yeah, interesting piece as well. So look, those are basics. The questions come up all the time, but how are you to know that until like as you say, it's something that's not been seen before. So
Yeah, and that's again, we have to remember too, like literally, this is a completely new alien concept for people. Anybody that's been alive today has been brought up in the fiat system, the fiat experiment, and we're not aware of that. But ultimately, this is just something that's completely game changing across the financial sphere spectrum. It's like, it's got a it's the magnitude is it's hard to describe it. It's such a big it's going to have such a massive impact. It currently is having a massive impact, but what it's going to do from now on as well, like I think it's only getting started as far as what we're going to see come down the line. 2025 is going to be a bit of a crazy year, but projecting that further, it's just going to be, a complete change to the whole system, I think, for the better for us, for individuals. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, Chris, but we're here for it. And anybody that wants to know more, we'll keep creating content, resources, and we're always here. If anybody wants to ask any questions, we can point them in the right direction.
yep, good stuff. I don't know, we have our Bitcoin breakthrough event coming up next week as well. If anybody wants to sign up for it, we will run it regularly as well. So just look out on our website, emerge21.com,
Mhm.
for the latest event. And yeah, that's a 5 day, 1 hour a day. It's like it covers a lot of ground in those 5 days, 5 hours. But it's also not so intense. Like it's at the right pace, I think. Now it doesn't mean that you're a Bitcoin expert by the end of it, but it gives you a hell of a head start over
Yeah.
people who've never studied this.
And it is like the content that you will receive in it will be eye-opening at the very least, but potentially even mind-blowing for many people because the first time I was exposed to how banks work, how money works, what Bitcoin is, what it will mean down the line, and how to actually function and use it properly, how to store it, how to do this, that, and the other. Yeah, it's very much it'll be quite interesting for anybody that comes along on the journey with us and joins the actual breakthrough event. So yeah, if you're on the fence with it, I would say jump on, sign up next week. This is the first week we're running it, so it's the maiden voyage, so to speak, for the Bitcoin breakthrough. So it'll be great to have a few more people on board with it to get their feedback as well on what we're doing, how we're presenting it, the content we're putting out there, and just hopefully to get a few more Bitcoiners on board as well,
Yeah.
to help themselves and their obviously the future and their family in the future as well, because this is your savings account. This is your life raft from the current system, which is falling apart quite rapidly.
Yeah.
But many seem to be totally unaware of that still, which is
Yeah.
strange.
Yep. Maybe we'll wrap
Anyway,
it on that note because that's the kind of crux of it. Like a lot of people unaware, and we're here to change that.
yeah, cool. Well, sure, we'll leave it at that, Chris, for this episode, and we'll be in touch. But yeah, check out our website, Emerge 21, and we'll post a link below for the breakthrough event as well next week. So anybody around and wants to join on, feel free, and we'll leave it there.